You're listening to RcFlightCast podcast with Frank Betts. Well, hello everybody. Welcome once again to my podcast. It's August 4th right now. It's about 5:30 in the afternoon. A really nice day out, about 74 degrees. And previous podcasts I've worked on, I've talked about the FAA and RC pilots and, you know, anybody in this hobby there, how they have to deal with the FAA. I had a couple of my friends come over today, and, well, they got a little unlucky there. They were out with their drones over at a small park over there in Bedford, Michigan. And anybody who knows that, it's a fairly small park with a pavilion. And there's plenty of room for, you know, whatever. But they just wanted to get up there and run their drones. And evidently there was a party at the pavilion down at one end of the park. And the only thing they can figure, somebody called to complain. And a FAA fella showed up. I guess it was an unmarked car. Went in and asked them some questions and asked them what they were doing. And fortunately, they, you know, followed the regulations. They were registered and they had all that information on them and what have you there. So he just gave them a warning and told them, you know, watch your step. And so it cleared out of there. But anyway, so that got me to thinking, you know, on past podcasts, I've talked a little bit about the FAA and the AMA and how you deal with the FAA about flying safely and what have you, and who has to take these tests, the trust tests that they are requiring. But I'm going to do a little bit, I'm going to backtrack here a little bit and just give you a little overview here. I've had people ask me, where did they come up with this 0.55 pounds weight limit? And I guess the easiest thing I can do right now is just read right off of a FAA segment. But the 0.55 pounds or 250 grams weight limit for drone registration was established by the FAA based on the recommendations of a task force. And a little bit of a background, in 2015, the FAA implemented a requirement for the registration of small unmanned aircraft systems or drones. A task force was then convened to advise on the specifics of this registry, including recommending minimum requirements for drones needing registration and exploring options for a streamlined system. And one key recommendation involved determining which drone would be exempt due to low safety risk. And the 0.55 pound / 250 gram threshold was ultimately adopted as the weight limit above which drone registration is mandatory, even for recreational use. And the purpose, the main goal behind this registration requirement is to increase drone operation accountability and facilitate safer UAS operations. It helps ensure the authorities can trace and locate the operator of a drone in the event of an accident or unlawful activity. So in essence, the 0.55 pound weight limit is a practical threshold the FAA established to identify drones that pose a higher safety risk based on input from a dedicated task force. And requires their registration to enhance accountability and promote safe operations in the national aerospace system. I hated that when they did that. That's just the government coming in here and grabbing money off of you, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, that's the essence of where they come up with that weight limit. So, you know, with that, here's a clear, no-fluff guide on how to stay out of trouble with the FAA when flying your RC aircraft / drone whether you're flying foamies, 3D printed planes, or a full-blown gasser, for lack of better words. But first thing is register your aircraft if required, and I did that myself here, I don't know, about a year ago. I went ahead and, with my drone, I went ahead and got it all registered up and took the little tests and all that stuff. So gave them my $5 for 3 years. And who needs to register? Any RC aircraft over, like I said earlier, over 0.55 pounds or 250 grams. And that applies to drones and fixed-wing aircraft. And where you can register is and I'll have links to these. FAA Drone Zone website is FAADroneZone/access.faa.gov. And it costs $5, and that's valid for 3 years. And gotta avoid those scam sites, because they charge more and not even register you properly. You gotta watch out for that. I've heard those stories. So make sure you get to the right place to get yourself set up right. Just like I did, you gotta label your aircraft. You must mark your aircraft with your FAA registration number. And the requirements: visible without tools, no hiding inside the fuselage, and can be on the outside or inside if easily accessible, like a battery hatch. I mean, you can just take a Sharpie or whatever and write the numbers on that. It doesn't have to be that big, because there's no way they're going to spot something like that flying overhead like they do with full-size aircraft. They just want to know that if something goes wrong and they find that aircraft crashed into somebody's car or whatever, they can look over the aircraft and spot that number, and they tell exactly who and whatever, what person owns that. That's your responsibility. So number 3 here is take the trust test. And trust equals the recreational UAS safety test. And it's free and required for all recreational flyers. It's quick and easy, open book format. And you can take it at FAA.gov/UAS/recreational /flyers/knowledge_test_updates. Again, I'll have this linked. Comments below. Once done, print your completion certificate and keep it with you when flying. FAA can ask to see it. Just like I said at the beginning of this podcast, my buddies had their little piece of paper with them, and they were able to show that they were compliant, but obviously they were annoying some people down the line just a bit, so got to watch that stuff. Number 4 is you got to fly below 400 feet AGL, and that's above ground level. So if you're standing on a 10-foot mound, 390 feet is all you can go. Or if you're standing on sea level, 400 feet. So whatever it is you're doing there, make sure it's 400 feet. So you're legally limited to flying below 400 feet unless you're part of a FAA recognized club, which is FRIA site. And which comes to number 5, fly at a FRIA site or know the rules. And that FRIA stands for Recognized Identification Area. So these are approved club fields, usually under AMA, and where flying without remote ID is still allowed. So flying outside a FRIA, you need the remote ID broadcast module attached to your plane, or a drone/plane with built-in remote ID, which is rare for fixed wings. And here's a little RC tip. For most hobby planes, stick to FRIA fields to avoid the headache of remote ID requirements. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's about $50 or something. And you stash them in your plane, and it's like a transponder. It gives off information. But I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's like a Bluetooth signal. So somebody has to make a complaint, and they actually have to come up to you or close to you so they can see exactly what your plane's doing, or drone, to get a reading off that. So they got to be, pretty close to actually get you. So number 6 is stay 5 miles away from airports unless you notify the control tower and get permission. And for hobby flying, it's just not worth the risk. Stay well outside that bubble. And use apps like Before You Fly by the FAA. That's one I use. It's nice. It's once you bring it up, it knows your location, and it'll show it's either green or red. And then it'll tell you who to get a hold of to be able to get the permission to fly in that area. And another one is Air Map. And these help verify you that you're in the legal airspace. And like I said, I use it and it works great. So number 7 is maintain line of sight. Always keep your aircraft in visual line of sight. No FPV only flights unless you have a visual observer standing next to you who can see the plane at all times. Number 8 is don't fly over people or moving vehicles. And the rule is don't be reckless. No buzzing the soccer game, no flying over roads, avoid congested areas, events, or emergency scenes. Number 9 is avoid controlled airspace unless you have authorization. Controlled airspace equals area around major airports, often Class B, C, or D. And for recreational flyers, use LAANC or low altitude authorization and notification capability to get automatic permission in many areas. And you can access that through Air Map, Kitty Hawk, it's now called Aloft, and UAV Forecast. Number 10, keep your nose clean. General safety. Don't fly drunk, high, or careless. And keep away from power lines, highways, and wildlife preserves. That wildlife preserves, there's a lot of touchy situations right there where you don't want to mess around there because it upsets, the birds and animals and what have you there. And those people there will not hesitate to report you. And, just don't chase wildlife or interfere with emergency operations. And be courteous at parks and public spaces. If someone complains, move along. And so here's a little bonus remote ID recap for 2025. As of March 16th, 2024, all RC aircraft flying outside of FRIAs must comply with remote ID. There's 3 options. Fly in a FRIA area, that equals no remote ID needed. Or install a broadcast module, and those, like I said a little earlier, around $50. And fly a plane with built-in remote ID, and that's pretty rare for the hobbyists. That's you need to put that in yourself. That's on you. So here we go with a summary checklist. And a requirement: register with the FAA, yes, for aircraft over 0.55 pounds. Label aircraft with registration number. Mandatory, yes. Outside or visible inside. Trust test. Mandatory, yes. Must carry proof. Remote ID or FRIA, yes. Choose one or stay legal. Stay under 400 feet, yes, unless special airspace. Line of sight flying, yes. Spotter allowed for FPV or first person views. No flying near airports, yes. That's mandatory. Use apps to check. And avoid flying over people. Mandatory, yes. Applies even at parks. So, that's about it for that. And I do have a little bonus section here. I know this podcast is going on a little bit, but it has to do with that trust test, and I've got here's some sample test questions that reflect the style and topics covered in the trust or the recreational UAS safety test issued by the FAA for hobby RC pilots in the United States. These are not real questions from the official test, but they follow the same general format and cover the same required topics. And that's true. Like I said, you can sit there and take that test over and over and over until you get the word, get them right. And it's a lot of common sense. So here's some sample questions for the trust test. Section 1 FAA rules and responsibilities. What is the maximum allowable altitude you can fly your recreational drone or RC airplane without special authorization? And the correct answer to that is 400 feet. FAA regulations limit recreational drone and RC aircraft operations to 400 feet above ground level unless in a sanctioned event or approved otherwise. Which of the following best describes your responsibility when flying a recreational aircraft? A, you are only responsible for keeping your own aircraft safe. B, you are responsible for safety and for avoiding manned aircraft. C, only commercial pilots need to worry about safety. Or D, you can fly anywhere if it's just for fun. And the correct answer is B, you are responsible for safety and for avoiding manned aircraft. The pilot in command of a recreational aircraft must avoid manned aircraft to maintain safety at all times. See, this is just common sense stuff. So then you got airspace awareness and restrictions. Before flying, how can you find out if you're in controlled or restricted airspace? A, ask another RC pilot. B, just fly low to avoid detection. C, an FAA approved app like Before You Fly or the UAS facility map. Or D, there's no way to find out. And of course the correct answer is use an FAA approved app like Before You Fly or the UAS facility map. And these tools show where you can legally fly and help prevent violations. And it does work. I've got that app. It's free and it's immediate. And it's not hard to get the gist of what's going on when you are looking at it. So flying near an airport or in class B, C, D, or E airspace generally requires A, nothing. It's all public property. B, you to fly only on weekends. C, authorization through LAANC or another FAA method. Or D, permission from the airport security guard. And of course the correct answer is C, authorization through LAANC or another FAA method. So, it's controlled airspace and it requires prior FAA approval, which can often be obtained using the LAANC. Safety and basic practice. When should you perform a pre-flight inspection of your RC aircraft or drone? A, only the first time you fly it. B, whenever the weather looks bad. C, before each and every flight. Or D, only if something looks broken. And the correct answer is C, before each and every flight. Regular pre-flight checks are a required safety practice for all RC flights of any kind. Which, again, common sense calls for that. And I'm gonna do one more here. So you must keep your aircraft within A, line of sight of your buddy. B, line of sight of a nearby drone observer. C, visual line of sight, VLOS, that's acronym for that, of the person flying. Or D, GPS range. And the correct answer is visual line of sight of the person flying. You must always be able to see your aircraft without binoculars or remote vision. And that's not fun anyway. If you got your RC airplane, you're out goofing off and flying 400 feet, or out like, 1,000 feet. That's out there. Unless you got a first-person viewer type camera where you can actually look at a screen and see where you're going, I don't know. I don't get nothing out of that. I like to fly close, low and slow, do some little aerobatics, just kick back and have some fun. So, again, this stuff is just common sense. There's Okay, so, the real trust test is untimed, free, and cannot be failed. So true. It can't be failed. And if you get a question wrong, it just explains the answer and you continue. At the end, you'll receive a certificate at the end of it, which you must keep on you when flying. And, you can print it right out. And you get on the FAA site. It's, you're already in the system there. So if you lose that piece of paper, it's a PDF file, I believe. And you just print out as many as you want and stash them wherever. So like I said, my buddies there got lucky. They had that information on them. And they must have sweet-talked the cop there because they just got off with a little verbal warning. So, yeah, interesting, to say the least. I tell you, they can come after you for just about anything nowadays. I remember when I first started flying back in the early 70s, you could do anything you wanted, and it was all fun. But I really think that these drones kind of started things off because people really started getting in trouble with them, going places they really shouldn't be going, and neighbors shooting them down. And that's where the trouble started. So, all right, well, hey, look, I'm sorry. I've done enough rambling on here. So this is, that's it for this episode of RcFlightCast. If it helped you out, hey, let me know. You can email me at frontcentermusician@gmail.com. And I do answer emails. That's how I get these podcasts going. Kind of like when my buddies come over and told me how they had their little incident with their drones there. So that got me wanting to do this podcast here. So anyway, so we'll check you later. Keep it safe, folks.